Fassel, Dunn, and welcome to Broad Appeal, where we feature inspirational women who are writing and living by their own rules. Today, we are interviewing Bobbi Wegner, and Bobbi is a longtime Milton resident and clinical psychologist. She practices integrative psychotherapy and behavioral medicine with a focus on the impact of stress on children, parents, and families. Welcome, Bobbi.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm super excited to be here with you today. We're all excited.
Oh.
So, I was reading about you before this interview, and you do so many things. Like, you do all the things, and then you're like, yeah, but don't be stressed out.
Yeah.
So, like, how did you do this all? So, can you tell me about your multiple methods of practice and teaching and sharing your expertise?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, awesome. I didn't do all these things when my kids were really young. So, my oldest is 9, my middle is 7, and my youngest is 4. So, a lot has evolved for me in the past I'd say 2 years or so.
Yeah, because they're basically adults now, right?
They're basically adults, and I'm also a free-range parent, so I allow more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, awesome.
So I back off a little bit, which gives me more time and space too. But so where to begin? So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm in clinical practice at Boston Behavioral Medicine in Brookline. I've been there for about 10 years. And so I see clients there, and I also am a supervising psychologist with our intern program. And then I do writing. So it started with the Milton Times, and I have a column called Raising and Roasting there. And then that sort of evolved into writing for different venues now too. And so teaching, I teach at Harvard Grad School of Education.
You basically don't do anything else.
Right? I like this. I like my job, so I'm okay.
Okay, so you're also teaching there?
Yeah, so there's 4 things. So it's clinical practice teaching. So it's a child advocacy course, which I love. And then it's a year-long course working with people from all different disciplines, teaching how to advocate for children in different venues. So clinical practice, teaching, writing, and then I'm starting to do a little more speaking. So I did a couple of TEDx talks this spring, and I've been kind of developing that, speaking at schools a little bit more recently, and that's kind of where I am.
It's fantastic, and it's
Thank
so
you.
exciting, and it's neat to see your meandering sort of pattern, which is also natural.
Yeah, no, I like change. I'm like one of the only people who like change, and I'm happy to do it.
This one person.
Yeah.
So your main focus, though, it seems to be stress reduction in parenting.
Yes.
So I don't get this because parenting's not stressful at all. So can you, for those of us who have stress in parenting, what do we do?
Yeah, where does this come
really,
from?
what do we do? Okay, I'm going to lay down.
Okay.
You tell me.
Well, I do clinical hypnosis, actually. So part of what I teach is self-hypnosis, and what that really is kind of meditation, mindfulness, quieting the body. So I specialized in clinical health psychology, and that is, I've worked with people who have major medical conditions who their conditions are exacerbated by stress. So a lot of it's like mind-body work, trying to quiet the body when they have, often not so great diagnoses.
Right.
So then this sort of evolved for me because I have 3 children, and I was doing a lot of stress management, mind-body stuff, and I came into parenting thinking I was all set. Like I'm a kid person, I was a nanny, I was working with kids clinically.
You like change? I mean,
yeah, it was like everything. I was like, you know what, I'm going to be all set.
Yeah, done.
And then I had a kid. And, I realized as a person with resources and knowledge, this is like still pretty impossible and completely stressful.
And really surprising when you think you have your stuff together,
yeah,
right?
It just, everything goes, out the window, off the table. So for me, I started to apply a lot of the behavioral medicine skills that I've learned working with these patients to parents. And then my practice has really kind of grown in that way. And I think with psychology and psychologists, often not a lot is shared about yourself, but I feel like there's so much to be learned when somebody who is like an expert in one way can sort of own not knowing and those uncomfortable feelings that we all have. So I was like, well, that could be really helpful to be writing about this and to put this out there in a public way, using myself almost as a
test case?
A test case, sort of. And kind of, sort of switch brains between my mom brain and then the psychologist brain. And that's like, it just felt, that's who I am,
And that's so great that you're able to do that, because it makes you so much more relatable in your multiple practices to be able to be like, yeah, I'm there too. Yeah, I want to sell my kids on eBay sometimes too. You know what I mean?
Totally.
We all do, and that's okay.
Yeah.
As long as you don't.
Right. as long as I don't. And when I'm sitting with a client and they're talking, about their parenting, and everyone has things that they're not proud of or things they've done that they just feel such deep shame about. And most mothers in particular shove those things way far down and just hope they don't do that again. But often that does happen again. And, when a patient's sitting there, I can say, listen, it's not about me, but I get where you're coming from. All mothers feel this way at different times, and that's okay. Let's talk about it, and let's think through what we can actually do about it. What are your options here? What are your tools? And the more we can talk about it, it frees mom and women and parents up to have other options in those moments.
So do you, I know it's really hard to generalize because everybody's situation is so different.
Right.
But do you have sort of like core pieces of go-to advice or recommendations that you give?
Yeah.
Particularly moms.
Yeah.
Sorry dads, I just do feel like we worry more, we feel more pressure to be perfect.
Right.
And to get it right more than dads.
Absolutely.
And we perseverate. Perseverate.
Yeah, and a lot has changed, I guess, just broadening the scope and looking at this in a cultural perspective, like post the women's movement, a lot of responsibility, a lot of doors have opened up for women, but a lot of the home responsibilities have remained the same. Exactly. So you're kind of holding both, and it's like, what do we do?
Right.
So our generation is trying to figure this out and navigate this.
Yeah.
And it's creating a lot of stressed out, overburdened moms. So I think for me, it is different for everybody, but it is really prioritizing and scheduling downtime and self-care. And that doesn't necessarily have to be, taking a spa day every week, but it's like, can you get up 20 minutes earlier and go for a walk? Or can you take a shower when you have a new baby?
By yourself
And lock the door and don't worry about what your kids are doing, even, just kind of like take some space. I also think giving more independence to your kids when it's developmentally appropriate, but as a culture, we tend to kind of to clamp down, and we look to our neighbors and our peers to see what they're doing, and we're just creating this like culture that has more and more anxiety that's just very helicoptery, and
Definitely.
It's like being a leader, kind of stepping back in some way and being the person that says like, I'm okay if my kid's playing outside by themselves, and I'm going to sit inside and just read this book or whatever it is. I'm going to watch from the window, and I'm going to tell my kid no when they ask for lemonade for the 50th time, and I'll get it in 20 minutes or whatever it is. But it's creating some boundaries and trying to maintain a sense of self as a woman and as a person outside of your kids.
Right. I think that's solid advice. And I love how you said it doesn't necessarily mean going to the spa for a whole day. It doesn't have to be that extreme. It doesn't have to be this big deal. It can be as little as, no, mommy's reading her book. Mommy's reading her book for 10 minutes.
And people think of that as being selfish, or might feel like, feel guilty about it.
Am I there for my kids?
Am I being responsive? But you're actually modeling good self-care and appropriate boundaries and downtime and all these other things that really don't get enough attention in my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, if you're going to sit there and read a book for 15 minutes, you're showing your kid that's something that's important. Whatever we do, if we're running after our kids and giving all of ourselves to all of our kids all of the time, you're teaching your kid to do that too.
Right. And when, especially with girls, but even with boys too, because the boys are going to expect that behavior from their, wives or partners going forward. But I mean, having, I have 3 girls, and so having my girls see like, mommy's doing this for mommy, and go away.
Yeah, go away.
Go away right now, because this is my time right now.
Exactly.
I do think it's important for them to see that and understand, like, okay, when you're a parent or whatever, when you have a million things going on, it is okay to be like, these are my needs. I have these needs right now, and you have to respect them.
Right. This is how it goes.
Yeah.
And trying to like, if you feel any guilt or shame personally, like thinking, all right, this is a little red flag, like, what's this about here? And just like pausing instead of just reacting out of, kind of an automatic behavior. It's like, all right, I'm feeling a little guilty. I should be doing this. Like, what's that really about?
Right.
And what do I actually want to do here?
Right.
Versus just automatically
jumping into like, I'm going to get them the lemonade or whatever and not make them wait 15 minutes. I really like that. I think that resonates. I think that's going to resonate with a lot of moms out there. So just to segue just for a second, when you were getting into this whole psychology thing, Did you know what you were going to do when you grew up?
You know what? In some ways, yes and no. So I grew up in Milton. My dad, is a long-time Milton resident. He actually grew up in Milton too. His mother had the first nursery school in Milton.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we've been around for a while.
I could sort of see this being a familial thing in a way.
Yeah, this is sort of like, we're all around and kind of giving back to the community. My dad was the chairman of the school committee for a long time. He was very important in my life, and when I was 21, he ended up passing away, unfortunately. And I was 21, and I was a senior in college, and I did my senior thesis. I was a psychology major on the process of dying and the process of losing someone.
Wow.
So I got really into clinical health psychology.
That's an amazing coping strategy, also.
It was really good for me personally.
Way before your years, sort of. That's pretty
You know
amazing.
what? I
That's
think
incredible.
through the parenting stuff, through that, I feel like the way I sort of experience the world is how do I experience it? And, if you can kind of give voice to it, it allows others to connect with it too. And I'm okay kind of like putting myself out there a little bit. So I did that. So in college, and then after college, I went to New York and worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering in clinical trials, doing clinical research, and then went back to grad school and got a specialization in clinical health psychology.
So it really has been like a pretty common thread.
It has been. And my oldest sister had severe developmental disabilities. So kind of this health perspective was always part of my life from the day I was born. You know? And I was always interested on the intersection between health, physical health, and mental health, and what that means for families.
And it's so important to not separate those two.
Exactly. The mind body are like really connected, and that's really I've lived it, I can see it, and I just have made a career out of it.
Good for you. So you're living the dream. You're kind of living the dream.
Oh my gosh.
As much as you can live the dream, you got it.
My suburban dream.
Yeah, exactly. So the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about today is, so this, this show focuses on women and, girls, and females, if you will. So one of the things I wanted to get into is to talk about bullying, like particularly in girls. It seems to be starting earlier and earlier, and it's so different from what we experienced as children. We have social media and phones and all different methods of flying under the radar with this behavior, So do you have thoughts or advice about that, both for, what to look for if you think this might be happening with your daughter, and what to look for in terms of getting bullied and excluded, and what to look for if you think, maybe your kid is doing this too?
Right. So what do you do about this? So one important developmental age that comes up for kids in a lot of different ways is third grade. That's when social awareness really increases, and kids start to see others in a different type of way. They're more outward focused and not quite as inward focused. So bullying can start at any time really, but oftentimes in my clinical practice I see that as like the beginning sometimes, and it can go from that all the way up through
so young.
Elementary. It's young, right? Through elementary and middle school and high school.
Right.
And a lot of bullying, the statistics tell us that about 60% go under the radar. So kids who are being bullied aren't necessarily going to come to an adult, whether it's a teacher or a parent, and say this is happening.
Why not?
I think oftentimes kids report feeling like that they could be retaliated against in some way, or it's just going to make it worse. And part of it is, although the social awareness is increasing, they really don't know that behavior is not normal or not healthy because they're still young and they're trying to navigate all this, as they go.
Yeah, they literally have no reference point.
Yeah, they have no reference point. So it's like your job as a mom or as a parent is really to be on the lookout. And one way that you can be on the lookout is to really look for behavioral changes. So if your kid has changes in appetite or sleeping or wanting to go to school or going to the nurse's office or stomach aches or headaches, or those are for the girls who are being bullied. And for the girls who could be bullying, it's really being curious and on top of like what's going on for those girls. Are there any changes in the family that would make that behavior kind of necessary or needed in some way? Or even things that are like more subtle. So, your daughter might not necessarily be leaving mean notes in another kid's locker, but they could be bringing, 3 best friend necklaces to the sleepover where there's 5 kids or 4 kids.
Right.
And
so it's this sort of subtle exclusion.
It's for girls, it's often not the physical bullying. And
which is so much easier to recognize, even though you never want it to happen.
Exactly. You don't want it to happen,
Right.
but especially when we were younger, that's like what we kind of looked for. Now it's much more covert and emotional and just kind of covert, emotional, more exclusionary, and just kind of being in contact with your kid and in communication and asking questions. Who are they sitting at lunch with? How was it for them?
Right.
Asking those open-ended questions.
Right.
What did it feel like? You know, who'd you sit with and what did it feel like? Or who was left out?
That's so interesting. What did it feel like?
Yeah.
That's great. It's so open-ended.
Yeah. That's like psychotherapy 101. So you ask a question. So your kid or your client says something, you reframe it in the same way. So it sounds like, you know, you sat at lunch today with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you?
Yeah.
And just like keep
And then
following.
pause.
And just wait.
Yeah.
And if you keep reflecting back, they keep giving. If you're not offering anything, if you don't offer advice, you don't offer a solution, you're just hearing what they're saying, you're reframing it, and then you're following the emotion.
This is a really good tip.
Tip.
That's great.
Tip.
Like, you hear what they say, you sort of almost like reframe, rephrase.
Yeah, it's mirroring. So it
Mirroring.
seems like it would be really obvious or it'd be really noticeable and be like, why are you doing that? But it's not. People just end up feeling heard.
Right.
So if you go to a couples therapy, that's just one exercise. You just say back what the other person says because it makes that person feel understood and heard. And you might not be hearing it right. They might say, no, that's not what.
Right, it's an opportunity, almost like triage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's might say, oh, no, that's not what I said or that's not what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of assumptions we make that we bring to parenting.
Yeah, I mean, our own experiences, our friends' experiences,
Exactly.
how we view our children, and maybe it's not 100%
Accurate. Yeah, temperament differences.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I'm a very classic 5th kid temperament. I have a very classic firstborn, you know, so we just have to kind
It's
of.
amazing, isn't it? How it follows suit, how really predictable it can be.
I know, I agree.
Yeah.
So I have to work hard to make sure I'm not imposing my own kind of 5th kid mentality on my firstborn.
I got to be honest,
son.
I'm a firstborn. I'm kind of jealous of your 5th kid mentality. I wish I had that.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It has its downsides. My
I'm sure
husband
it does.
will tell you.
I'm She's just too chill. She's just too chill. I don't know what to do.
Oh my gosh.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about is you are writing an interesting and fun sounding book. I cannot wait to get this book. Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. So I'm writing a book right now that's written like a child's storybook. You might have heard of a popular one called Go the Something to Sleep. And it's written in a similar type vein. So it's a quick reference, short book where there are little vignettes, real things that have happened to either me or my friends or mom clients that I have. And it'll have like a little visual picture, and then above it will be a thought bubble of like, so for example, when my son was like 3, I was looking for friends. We had moved to Milton. I still kind of hadn't found my group yet.
Yeah.
And this mom came over, and I was really excited. I was feeling like hopeful, and then within minutes, my kid bites the girl hard, and it was completely awkward.
There's the end of all that.
And I was like, oh God. So my thought was, I just want to bite him back and be like, don't ever do this again. And that would be the little picture. And then underneath it would be, well, what's actually happening for the kid in this moment, and put it into a child development frame.
Right.
And then underneath it would be like a quick one-liner that you could actually say in that moment.
Instead of biting your kid?
Instead of biting your kid.
So that's not your advice?
No, that's not my advice. So it's called How to Not Raise a Word I Can't Say on TV. How to Not Raise another word for donkey.
Which makes it, I definitely want this book.
So thank you. I'll let you know when it's ready.
Can't wait.
But it's psychologically sensitive responses to unfortunately common kid situations.
Right, and also fun to read.
It's fun. It's quick. You don't have to read a whole book. It's just like, oh God, this happened. What do I do in this moment? And my kid's not a bad kid. He's just going through whatever developmental
phase.
Yeah.
Where, we all know the biting phase is pretty
Yeah,
common.
it happens.
And, it does happen.
It is what it is. And when you have a firstborn, you don't realize that. you know, for your first kid.
You're like, hey, there's something wrong with my kid. He bit someone.
Something's wrong with my kid. Yeah. I'm a bad parent. It always comes back to, what am I doing wrong? He's being a bad guy. Something's wrong with my parenting style. And then it just snowballs from there. Yeah. Versus being like, oops, that happened. How can I kind of get through this moment, understand it, empathize, teach, and move on?
Right. I love that. I love the developmental information, like the small piece of developmental information. Okay, well, this is what's happening right now, which, I mean, most of us as parents, we don't get that sort of one-on-one, not that subtle. Right. No way, not on that level. It's like, you know, sleep advice, feeding advice, and there you go. Yeah. Good luck.
And all these recommendations, like you know, especially when you have your first kid, you go to your pediatrician, they're citing the American Academy of Pediatrics, whatever the norm is then, which often changes in a year or 2 years.
It's amazing how much it changes.
It changes a lot.
From kid to kid.
So a lot of it's really about following your intuition and feeling secure enough in that. Yeah. And putting everything in a developmental context and be like, this is normal, this is okay. I just need to get through it and do like the least damage possible, you know?
Which is not biting.
Right, which is not biting back.
So there's different ways that people can reach out to you and read what you're writing about. It sounds like they're kind of all over the place. So can you go through some of the ways that people could learn more about you?
Absolutely, thank you. So the easiest way is probably just go to my website. So it's Dr. Bobbi, B-O-B-B-I, Wegner, WEGNER.com. Okay. So I do writing for the Milton Times and other organizations.
I've seen it online as well. You've had a couple different,
so I write for Scary Mommy. I've done. I write regularly for Mind Body Green, and I work with NBC News. I'm like an expert for them, and I write content for them, and a bunch of different places. So
and then the TEDx, you do TEDx talks?
Yeah, so I gave 3 TEDx talks in the spring, and it was really raising conscious boys in an unconscious world. So it's really about like, how do you talk to kids directly about sexual responsibility, and how do you make sense of this Me Too movement and how that really impacts us as parents?
Oh, that's
and like what to do.
Super important and super timely.
Yeah, it was very timely, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I was happy to put my hand in the conversation.
And can people watch that?
Yeah, so there's one, I did one at TEDx Dartmouth, TEDx WPI, and TEDx Wolfboro. So the Dartmouth one is up. I was actually just in New Hampshire, as I was telling you last night, re-recording the Wolfboro one. So they'll all be getting online and probably the coming month or so.
Them. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Right now, we just learned all about this stuff, how it's okay to, you know, question your parenting sometimes. I think we need a drink, so we're just going to take a minute and learn how to make a fantastic cocktail. Hey everybody, we are making a harvest mimosa today, and this is fantastic for those after Thanksgiving mornings or that weekend or kind of any time at all. So what I have right here is some cranberry juice and some apple cider and some Prosecco, or you can also use champagne. So this is actually sparkly. I love the sparkly one to give it a little bit more bubbles, but you can use regular cranberry juice as well. So it's super, super easy to make. I am going to pour the cranberry fizzy juice in first, and then I'm gonna add the delicious apple cider, and then we're gonna top it off with the champagne. And a nice sort of thing to make it look even prettier is to add a little bit of chopped apple, but definitely chop your apple last minute so you don't have yellow chopped apple. And we're gonna just gently stir it up. Looks super yummy. Delicious. Cheers.
And so here's a parenting tip that I've learned both through my work as a psychologist, but more importantly as a parent. So my kids were young, I used to do these really hardcore timeouts. So if my kid was acting out, I would sort of banish them to their room and really use the timeout more as a punishment. And through raising kids, I've realized that the timeout can actually be a really good opportunity for kids to learn self-regulation. So one way to help this is you can buy something called a medical pulse oximeter from Amazon. It's about $15. And it's a little piece of equipment. You can do a little home biofeedback. So you slide this little machine on your finger, and the kid can see his or her heart rate. And then as the kid starts to breathe and do belly breathing, the heart rate drops. And once the child feels calmer, they're free to be much more clearer in their thinking, and you have much more leverage to actually use this as a teaching moment. So my tip for the day is to use the timeout more as an opportunity for self-regulation and teaching rather than punishing consequence. And it can be really aided by buying something called a pulse oximeter, and you can get it on Amazon for $15. So good luck with that.
Thank you so much, Bobbi, for giving us so much useful advice today. I think that, we can take away so many good things from this interview. So thank you for talking to us and taking time out of your very busy schedule to give us all that advice.
Oh, that was really fun. Thank you for having me, and thanks so much for doing this, for bringing all these women together. It was so nice just to talk with you and to learn what you're doing and what other women in town are doing.
Thank you. It's totally my pleasure.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody, for joining us. For more information about Bobbi and for more information about this show, visit broadappealtv.com.